have you heard the term Waqf before? So just try and establish a baseline. What is the general understanding that people have, or what they think is the understanding they have around what Waqf means, land donated by someone? So amongst the Muslims, quite naturally, 77% say yes, we know what Waqf is. Even others claim, 6 out of 10 claim they've heard of the term Waqf and have some sense of what this means. How familiar are you with the concept of Waqf? So, okay, you've heard the term. What does it mean? Do you understand how this operates? So, obviously, 63% of Muslims say, yeah, of course, we're very familiar with the term. 11% say they're somewhat familiar. Amongst the non-Muslims, 22% say they're very familiar. 1 in 5. 19% say they are somewhat familiar. 32% say they are not very familiar. And 17% say they're not familiar at all. Now, this is crucial before I bring you the operational part of the survey, because amongst 80% of the respondents who you will hear from, the large bulk are saying they are not very familiar or not familiar at all. So about 50 odd percent are saying we don't know very much. 19% are saying we know a little bit. Only 1 in 5 of that 80% are saying they're very familiar. So do keep this in mind as you look at the responses to these questions. Let's come to the first question. Do you believe the Waqf bill is fair? Do you believe the new Waqf law is fair? What do you think of it? Here, 59% of non-Muslims think yes, the new act is fair. Only 6% of Muslims think the new Waqf law is fair. In comparison, 88% of Muslims think no, the Waqf law is not fair, while 22% of non-Muslims say it's not fair. So non-Muslims think, oh, it's fantastic, even though, a large part of that 80% say they don't really know what the concept of Waqf is. And amongst Muslims, 88% say that this is not fair. Yashwant Deshmukh, I'll start with you. I know you're nursing a bad throat, so pardon him if he sounds like Amitabh Bachchan, but broadly, there is a massive disparity along the lines of religion on the issue of the Waqf bill. The non-Muslims seem to say, yes, this is good that it's going through. This is a fair law from what they've understood. And Muslims say, no, they don't think this is fair.
Exactly, Rahul. And this shows the kind of partisanship in the society we are watching at this point of time. It's not just political, but it is also on the communal and religious lines. Having said that, there are many other questions which we will be discussing in the program as we progress, and you will also realize while looking at those questions. And I am asking, looking at the data myself, Rahul, whether the answers or whether the distrust as the minorities are showing in this poll has anything to do with the institutions or has everything to do with those in power and the way they are proceeding with the bill. So that is an important point, because in many other questions, I also tend to realize that Muslims at large are not really completely averse to the idea of openness and more transparency, but it's the implementation part somehow, the way it is being done, it is being carried out, the way it is being debated, that is something which is carrying the way. It's more of a narrative setting and which is very evident how the narrative is set among the non-Muslims.
Let Deshrata Nigam respond to this. The fact that only 6% of Muslims think this bill is fair, 88% think it's not fair. It's been pushed through, the government has the numbers, it's now a law. But the fact that the people most directly impacted in large percentage think that this bill is not fair, is that really reflective of the inability to win over public sentiment amongst those most impacted by the new act?
Well, Rahul, in fact, there was a protest in Delhi, and a lot of social media people and the mainstream channels also went there. And they were surveying people, asking questions. And there, 99% of the people didn't know what Waqf is. So the problem out here is not about what Waqf is or not, it's the perception that is going around the people. So what is actually happening on the ground is certain kind of leaders who are spreading, all kinds of rumors among them are creating some kind of perception, because that is all politically motivated. Here, nobody has touched the Waqf. Waqf will have Waqifs and Mutawallis who will be followers of Islam. Therefore, only its impact, that is the judicial aspect, is secular. in India, which is governed by constitution, the judicial system in India at all levels is secular. So the judicial system, as Amit Shah also pointed out during his speech in the parliament, Kiran Rijiju also, the redressal grievance mechanism that is there, grievance redressal mechanism, I'm sorry, that is there, is secular. So there is nothing wrong in it. So that perception that people are creating, and if you scratch this 88% that you're showing, I'm 100% sure, as it was done in the past, they do not know anything about Waqf. It's the perception that...
No, so let Rauf Rahim respond to this, because you've looked at this, Mr. Rahim, more from a legal perspective and you have your reservations about it. Deshrata Nigam makes the fact that the overall understanding of the nuances of the law in the general public, Muslim and non-Muslim, is limited. Therefore, it is more about the political narrative, the messaging, and how people perceive and decode the actions of the government, whether they trust that or not, rather than what they actually understand of the nuances of the bill.
See, the important thing is, let's not mix politics with the bill. There's no point. We have to analyze the bill as literate people. Those who can't understand the bill, there's no point going to them. The Sachar committee came up and said that this, the Muslim community is now in a very bad state. So insofar as education, etc. is concerned. So let's not ask them who don't know about the bill. Let's take the literate Muslim who would stand up and say and analyze as to what are the nuances in the bill and why the need for amendment. The important thing is why the need for amendment. The judicial redressal, being secular, is not something new. Judicial redressal is always secular. You can't say that judicial redressal is not secular in this country. So what has to be firstly seen is the amendments which have come forward. On a one-to-one basis, one should sit down and analyze as to what was there in the 1995 Act, what came by way of amendment in the 2013 Amending Act, and what is new and so very pervasive that hits the Muslim community as a whole. That has to be analyzed. The legislature in its wisdom framed the 1954 Act, then came the 1984 Act, which after the 54 Act, there were 3 amendments. Then the 1995 Act came, which covered the entire country. Previously, Bengal and Uttar Pradesh had their own Waqf laws. And then came the 2013 Amendment. Now the legislature in its wisdom incorporated certain salient features in the 2013 Amendment, which according to me, if they had been worked, even if they had been worked halfway, no need would have come for the present amendment. There would have been no need. And I say no need for one reason, is that I am a PIL petitioner in the Supreme Court. I myself said that there has been no survey process going on. And all the states have come up in unison and said there has been no survey in terms of the Amending Act. All the states are on affidavit. So at a stage, if there is no survey, the most fundamental thing is not happening, which is the properties are not surveyed. Then the chance of encroachment increases.
Sure.
So if the chance of encroachment increases, it gives birth to a number of litigations. So today, what was very, very, and I say very, very simple, has been just made into a mounting problem. I don't see any reason why these amendments have come in and why, and I say again, why the 2000 amendments were not carried forward for 12 years. There has been no effort at all for the last 12 years.
So that's an important point you make, that we should have first tried to implement the law as it stood earlier, rather than trying to, and you're raising questions about the need for the new law. Is the new Waqf law targeting the Muslim community? Let's take a look at the responses to this question. Overall, 31% say yes, it targets the Muslim community, but let's look at the Muslims. 87% feel targeted. Those are big numbers. 22% of the non-Muslims say that the Muslims are being targeted. I want to put that question to Rajat Sethi. Rajat, 87% of the Muslims say they are being targeted. 88% think the new law is not fair. Now that is, and you understand statistics, that is like a very high percentage of people who don't feel comfortable, who are most impacted by what the government has done. They don't think it's the right thing to do.
So, Rahul, I think this is clearly the pitfall of having serious public policy related questions being asked with common man on the street. None of these people go by those actual documents, actual papers, and read the clauses, because it's hard to even expect them. It is up to the leaders, their representatives sitting in the parliament and discussing. Look at them. They were supposed to talk clause by clause and possibly propose certain amendments, etc. But look at typical Imran Pratap Ghari. What does he say? His opening line, he went on to make a 15-minute speech full of rhetoric, very little on content. He said that Maulana Abul Kalam Azad की मज़ार है, वहाँ पर वो सो रहे हैं, वो मज़ार भी उखाड़ दी जाएगी, वो भी चला जाए. All of these rhetoric tends to sit, minus all the core contents which you can debate and have a healthy discussion around. This fear psychosis is clearly reflected in these numbers. These numbers are such because very, very few people understand. 99% of them would never enter into any cross paths of Waqf in their entire life, but they will have an opinion on it. It is primarily because these are polls, and you want the entire community to pick one poll and just associate everything, your entire rationality, you just bestow it on those polls.
Okay, let Tasneem Rahmani respond. You're making an important point, because if you see, sir, what happened post the Triple Talaq bill, for example, such a hullabaloo created about how this would be very problematic for the Muslim community. In the end, there hasn't been that much of a problem, frankly, except those who may have tried to do a triple talaq, which in any case is wrong, or even take the Citizenship Amendment Act, where again so much of a fear psychosis was created. Rajat has a strong point that a lot of this fear misnomers that people in the Muslim community have is because the leaders of the community, or at least a section of the leaders of the community, have spread that fear. And there are two very important cases, the CAA and the second triple talaq law, where things haven't panned out the way community elders said they would.
See, Rahul, we are living in a secular country, pursuing a secular constitution. I am guaranteed by my constitution that I will live within my religious environment. I will maintain my religious institution, education institution, and my properties. And that's why the government becomes the custodian of my rights. And we must have to respect and honor that custody of the government of India and its supremacy and its right to amend the bills and the laws related to any community of the country, but with their own opinions. So everybody becomes, every sect or the religious identity or any entity which has a separate identification, they become the stakeholders. So why don't if I don't want such a kind of an amendment, then why the government is so very much inclined to do the very much, even if I like it or not. So being a stakeholder, at least my opinion must be respected. And we are not frightening the community at all. We have the substances. And I agree with my previous panelists that there are people inside the parliament, certainly, which are not talking on the facts and the contents of this bill. Even the opposition benches, I don't appreciate the whole debate, the 26-hour debate in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, where the opposition benches has tried to condemn this bill, but they were not, they were just like, they were speaking like an election public meeting. Those were not on the facts. The same way the treasury benches, whatever they said, they tried to create a public perception through their parliamentary speeches. Bulk of those speeches were a plethora of misinformation produced by the WhatsApp university, and they have been authenticated.
You make an important point, the absence of nuance, the absence of detailing.